Hello and welcome to this, our last of 3 days of discussions for the College of Law Practice Management Futures Conference. On behalf of the leadership of the college, Michael Mills, our president, Elenide Sims, our president-elect, and all of the college's trustees, I'm pleased to once again convene the brain trust of the college for another day of what we've been calling important conversations to shape a better future. My name is Susan Hackett, and I chaired this year's conference planning committee. But the true leaders of this program are my fellow planning committee members, Catherine McDonough, Kat Moon, and Jay Oom. And of course, our terrific college administrator, Debbie O'Connell, who I don't think has slept for the last month or more with all of the work she's done to make this event happen. Every one of us in the college's leadership also thanks our generous sponsors, listed here on the event page. Without their support, we couldn't produce this program or so many other college activities. So thank you very much. So I hope that most of you have participated in at least one of the previous 2 days of conversations. Last week for the DEI conversation, or the week before when we opened our discussions with a focus on ESG. Today is the final session of our Conversations That Matter, and we'll focus on the digital transformation brought on by the Fourth Industrial Revolution, otherwise known as 4IR. While our conversations today will take place in much the same manner as the previous 2 weeks, today's is a little different in that at the end of today's program, we'll conclude with a closing call to action talk by Jim Sandman. As before, I want to remind you that the video from the opening session in November and from the previous 2 sessions, introductions and spark talks, is already up, and this session will soon be up on the COLPM website. So you can revisit or share those great Spark Talks with others. We'll also soon be mounting that online resource library space for materials related to these conference discussions that I've mentioned before, in hopes that you will not only continue to explore these issues and carry them into your daily work and lives, but continue to contribute to them. And to that end, we'll soon begin our project of reviewing the Jamboards and notes from all 3 of our sessions and asking for help from college members in pulling together a report on our conversations. We want to capture our findings, ideas, and perspectives that can be shared with the profession. The 3 topics that have occupied our attention at this conference will continue to occupy the attention of our colleagues in practice. They'll also continue to occupy the attention of our clients, the legal system, and our society. As leaders in a profession of leaders, I hope you will carry forward the good ideas raised in these conversations, and that your curiosity and your willingness to dive into these topics will inspire you to continue to engage with others in moving these issues to the next level, beyond our conversations and toward actions and implementation. Here is our opportunity to not only admire these issues intellectually, but also to engage and lead on them with those you work with and serve, as well as those in our larger communities where your voice has influence and your passion can and must drive change. So for those of you who've had to sit listening to me talking for the last few weeks as we kick off each day's discussion, my husband sends you his greetings, but he would remind you that unlike him, after today, you'll be free of me. But first, you'll not only get to hear me one last time introduce our conference subject du jour, and that topic is the 4IR and digital transformation discussion. As the daughter of a historian, I tend to process conversations like this in the context of historical movements and interactions. And so to best understand the Fourth Industrial Revolution, you need to not only see what may be coming next, as we're trying to discuss here, but understand why the first 3 revolutions were distinguishable. The first industrial revolution, most would peg between the 1760s and the 1840s or 50s, began with people moving from making their living via painstaking hand production methods in small, often remote, interdependent communities, toward production that was powered by things like water or steam to reinvent the way that they worked and the kind of work that they did. So this first revolution drastically increased the amount of time and interaction between previously isolated people beyond their homes and through markets and economies. The second industrial revolution from the 1870s until the early 1900s saw many workers and society even fundamentally shift towards cities and factory-style work, where large-scale production and relatively bounteous lifestyles were facilitated by the advent of transportation and telegraph networks, as well as things like electricity. This facilitated not only larger and more interconnected shared economies versus increased production and consumption, but also the increased exchange of ideas and the intermingling of more diverse peoples and cultures. Some would also note that while industry got stronger and life got better for those who adapted, others experienced a first-time surge in things like unemployment or alienation from their historical communities, as many workers were replaced by machines or markets that excluded them or displaced them from their communities from which they could no longer find the means to thrive. So on to the third industrial revolution, otherwise known as the digital revolution, which is of course a product of the 20th century. The digital revolution brought us not only the first computers and networks, but huge advances in communication and infrastructure and transportation, accompanied by a greatly increased global economic and cultural interaction. And as a part of these advances, we all felt more closely connected and impacted by each other's actions, for better or for worse, as a part of an increasingly global and connected community. Which brings us to our topic today, the fourth industrial revolution, a phrase coined by Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. 4IR is distinguished from the third or digital revolution by its trends toward automation in our work, our homes, and in our interactions, but also by the explosion of data and cloud computing, cognitive technologies and artificial intelligence, social media, and the possibilities and challenges brought by connectivity to everyone and everything all the time. It also created giant disruptions and displacements in labor markets and continues to bring us closer to what many of us think of as a 24/7 work cycle. And so in our time, we live and interact in a metaverse or the Internet of Things, a world in which we create our own realities, in which some can now both create and control entire systems used by hundreds of millions of people. It is at the same time liberating for some, but fundamentally limiting to others. One of the most notable aspects of 4IR is the extremely accelerated pace of change. It's exponential, as well as the radical transformations 4IR brings to our daily lives, both the scope of change and its impact. And both are even more extreme than in previous times of change. So for many of us, it's almost like there's no time to think or absorb these changes. For others, these changes can't happen fast enough. And often these divisions form on generational lines. Since many lawyers and legal institutions are tortoises in responding to change, this isn't a happy or productive set of challenges for many in our profession. As we examine the impact, challenges, and opportunities created by the fourth industrial revolution, we realize that we're facing a topic full of contradictions. For instance, everything is both connected and transparent, creating both the ability to operate independently of others while making it seem impossible to believe that we're not being watched, monitored, and data tracked in pretty much everything we do. Biotechnology promises the eradication of that which would both age or impede us physically, at the same time that the majority of people can't afford or don't have access to basic healthcare. We rely on digital advancers that control every facet of our lives, from the phones in our hands to the GPS in our cars to the online retail shopping we've become addicted to. And yet many claim that what makes digitization possible, data, tech, big companies, complex infrastructures and information systems, are actually suspect. Facts are no longer facts, and science is not to be trusted. Daily tasks that previously burdened us are solved by inventions of every kind, but we can't figure out how to live our best lives without killing the planet which makes our lives possible. So many new and better jobs are created by new industries founded on digital advances, but more and more people are pushed out of jobs they had or into jobs they don't want or labeled non-essential or unskilled because they aren't positioned or trained to take advantage of new digital work. Billionaires abound while the poor get poorer. And well, you get my drift. This can be both invigorating and exhausting, offering optimism in our abilities to solve every problem and alarm at how few really important problems we seem interested in solving. Is all this because of the transformations brought on by 4IR and an increasingly digital world? If you ask my mom, it is. She's 89, and she thinks that all that technology has created pretty much every problem we suffer, and that it makes people less civil, less humane, more self-absorbed. At 89, the world of the previous revolutions that she knew and even cheered for is gone. And the one she faces both frightens and confuses her. She feels that there's no place for her in this strange universe in which we now live. The move toward a digital transformed world should not be viewed as my mother views it. But I would dare say that we all know lawyers, law firms, legal departments, law schools, courts, and all kinds of legal institutions that are still firmly entrenched in the worlds of the first and second revolutions, nonetheless adapting to or preparing for the third or fourth. As many lawyers may not be as extreme as my mom is in her view, many lawyers do feel uncomfortable in this strange universe in which we find ourselves. We can't afford to view the digital transformations of 4IR as something interesting that impacts others, but not us, not our guild. We can't view it as something that won't change the way we do things, nor how we make money or provide services, since after all, law is different. Law is above all that somehow. Lawyers decide how law will be practiced and how legal services will be delivered. If there's one lesson that 4IR and digital transformation teach us as we view the world today, it's that law is not different. Indeed, the disaggregation of so many tasks previously performed only by lawyers or the legal system has made it possible for a whole lot of other people and systems to prove just the opposite. Law is no longer a black box owned by the legal profession, operating an exclusionary guild answering only to its own values and cultures. While it may have been designed that way hundreds of years ago, it was wrong then, and it's simply untrue now. Digital transformation is both our present and future reality, and we can't avoid it, stop it, or pretend that it's not overtaking every aspect of what we do, who will do it, how we do it, what it costs, and even the results it delivers. To borrow a favorite analogy, those who refuse to dine at the 4IR table may find that they are on the menu instead, and they risk being devoured by others who come to the table with an appetite, a knife, and a fork. 4IR is not about whether you deploy some basic technologies in your workplace. It's about the increasing or decreasing relevance of workers, customers, regulators, industries, and professions in a rapidly changing and increasingly digitized world. And for lawyers, it requires us to change everything we do and how we do it, rethinking our roles and our value, finding new ways to leverage transformations to enable us to better tackle the major issues confronting lawyers, clients, and the justice system, such as access to justice and the rule of law, DEI and ESG, changing client and customer needs and expectations, and new ways that society will or won't be governed. For the legal profession, this is all about relevance and whether we'll have any in the coming years. But for those of us in the college, I hope we'll help to lead in 4IR and digital transformation in all of its many forms. I hope we'll host the dinner at that table and take part in planning the menu and cooking the meal and learn to value and collaborate with those who join us as guests and co-hosts at that table. It's about doing more than making sure we aren't devoured by the change. It's also about assuring that those we serve aren't devoured either. It's about using digital progress to promote solutions to all of the questions that matter. Now, I know that those of you who have become connoisseurs of my introductions will be sad to hear it, but I'm not going to go through all of the format instructions again, since I think that likely most of you have been at previous sessions and can help those who are new when they need direction from you and your facilitators and groups. But our schedule once again features 2 10-minute Sparks talks, which are coming up next, that will explore and hopefully expand your thinking about today's topic even further. And then you'll select your discussion group by number from the breakout sessions offered on the event screen. Please remember that we have created a new list of assignments for breakouts again this week, so you aren't in the same groups that you were in for the previous Tuesdays. So find your group number in the email you received with this Zoom link, or check out the registration list with the group assignments that Debbie has posted onto the event page if you don't know your number. Your break today will only be about 20 minutes between the sessions, so that after your second hour-long discussion, we'll have 10 minutes to conclude our conference with a presentation by Jim Sandman. And while in your discussions, please interact on both the Zoom call and on the Jamboards. We'll pull the Jamboards post-program, as you know, to collect your thinking, but the Zoom calls are not recorded so that you can be open and candid in your conversation. So let's get started with our first Spark talk from Margaret Hagan. Margaret is the director of the Legal Design Lab and a lecturer both at Stanford's Law School and the Stanford Institute of Design, otherwise known as the D School. She was a fellow at the D School from 2013 to 2014, when she launched the program for Legaltech and Design, experimenting in how design can make legal services more useful, usable, and engaging. She teaches a series of project-based classes with interdisciplinary student groups, tackling legal challenges through user-focused research and the design of new legal products and services. She also leads workshops to train legal professionals on the design process to help them produce client-focused innovation. Margaret graduated from Stanford Law School in June of 2013 and served as a student fellow at the Center for Internet and Society, as well as the president of Stanford's Law and Technology Association. She holds an AB from the University of Chicago, an MA from Central European University in Budapest, and a PhD from Queen's University in Belfast in international politics. So please welcome to the stage for our first IR Digital Transformation Spark Talk, Margaret Hagan.
Hi, I'm Margaret Hagan. I'm here to present a Spark Talk on how we can use legal design to push forward innovation in our industry, in our research, and in society more generally. So the question that motivates me, and I'm sure motivates many of you, is how we can make the legal system actually work better for all the different stakeholders who have to deal with it, whether it's people who work inside the system, judges, administrators, clerks, lawyers, advocates, or the people who are having to interact with it, litigants, defendants, their family members. We know from all of these stakeholders that there are problems. There are many of them. There's inefficiencies, difficulties in navigating the system, burnout, and frustration with how the system actually works right now. The lab that I run at Stanford, which is similar to many other new innovation labs across the country, focuses on how we can improve the legal system by using disciplines from across campus, in my case. What are the things that design as a discipline or technology as a discipline can be useful in the world of law to transform this system and actually make it work better? So I'm going to talk today a little bit about these methods, this interdisciplinary approach, and how we as lawyers might be able to harness it. So this concept of design, you might think of it as just how something looks or kind of how it's decorated, something superficial. But really, it's a transformation in how we look at the systems around us. Looking at a system through the lens of a designer helps us to focus in on people's experiences and the opportunities about the problems that are are happening for all these different stakeholders. When we look at the legal system through the lens of design, we can start to see some really clear points that we should be focusing on, where people's experiences are breaking down. People are frustrated, getting things wrong, burning out, otherwise. We can also see all of these experiences in this kind of process flow-like point of view, where we can see if we could make a change here, this could have spillover effects down the road. So this is kind of the general point of view of what design can do when we start to use it as a lens to critique our legal system and really to spot opportunities for more creativity, more brainstorming, and more meaningful solutions. So when we take a design approach to legal services innovation, it not only helps us to see those problems and opportunities better, it also gives us a set of methods to actually work on improvement, to come up with these breakthrough new ideas. And really, it's a push to us as lawyers to diversify who we invite into this innovation work. That it shouldn't just be a bunch of lawyers sitting around a boardroom or on a Zoom call to talk about what are the problems, how do we make it better. Rather, a design approach pushes us to involve more community members, that more diverse stakeholder group, to come in and to tell us about their needs and behavior, or to ask us to go out and do that research, to go undercover in the courts, to go observe hearings, to see what people's needs and problems are. It also then invites us to have a bigger group of people into these brainstorming or agenda setting meetings, that we should be having interactive workshops. We should be going out to the community. We should be inviting non-lawyers like technologists, engineers, designers, social scientists, other not usual suspects into our meetings to talk about what are new solutions, what are we missing, what could we be doing differently. Design also pushes us to an ethos of experimentation, knowing that we will never get it right the first time, and we will need to have a plan to gather data and see, does this new service, this new policy, this new technology actually work as we intended it? We know that it's always going to be wrong in some way. So let's figure out how we can improve it, how we can test it again, and how we can have this iterative cycle of gradually making it better so that it actually works for people. So we follow this design process in our lab of going out and talking to people to figure out what is the problems we should be solving. How do we make the system better? Let's get some focal points by going out and discovering it in the field, by talking to the different stakeholders, observing, gathering data. And then we do these synthesis activities to map things out, make sense, prioritize where we should focus in. Then we go into that iterative cycle of building and testing to really come up with new solutions, borrowing from different industries, combining ideas, trying to really get to more creativity, and then doing that testing and gradual evolution of an idea. So this is how we work. This is a design process. And this is something that's not radically different than how most lawyers solve problems. But those points that I mentioned before of being more intentional about who's in the room, what methods you're using, and how you are actually committed to being more creative and more dedicated to figuring out, does it actually work in practice, really does make a difference in whether we'll come up with these impactful new ideas that can tackle the challenges that are facing us right now. So just to note that it can be a little bit messy. This type of work means at the beginning, there's a lot of exploratory work. There is trying out ideas that maybe don't end up succeeding, and you are honest about that and you go back to the drawing board. It also means having more voices in who typically aren't involved in these innovation sessions, policy making, agenda setting. So it's kind of being more inclusive and having a lot more cooks in the kitchen early, though there usually is a core team to make decisions and actually move things forward. But that participation, that interdisciplinary and that community-driven process is really the secret sauce, because it brings in these different voices who can also give that on-the-ground point of view and that outside-of-the-box inspiration to really help us as lawyers be better, make our system work for more people, and hopefully be prepared for the future. So those are some ideas from from this world of design. I'm happy to talk more if any of you have questions about how this works or examples, but I'll sign off here. Thank you.
Thanks so very much, Margaret. I am such a fangirl, and I think that your focus on design thinking is both critical and enlightening. Our next Spark Talk is from Nikki Shaver, who until quite recently was, like only the managing director for innovation and knowledge at Paul Hastings. As I understand it, she's decided to go all in with a company she's co-founded with her husband called Legaltech Hub. Nikki describes LTH as a resource to combine the most complete global legal tech directory with powerful search capabilities to offer a unified resource for finding the right legal tech tools, consultants, events, and more, no matter where you are or where the resources are in the world. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that. Like Margaret, Nikki is a legal innovation genius. She was recently named the 2020 Innovative Leader of the Year by the International Legal Technology Association, or ILTA as we know it. Not only was she recognized by ILTA in 2020, but her firm, Paul Hastings, where she'd led the innovation initiatives, was named Innovator of the Year as well. Now that's really all very impressive, but it's even more amazing when you consider that just a handful of years ago, Nikki was a media lawyer at a law firm in Australia and had never really focused any attention at all on legal innovation. When she moved to Toronto several years ago, she decided to go head on into an innovation role in joining Castles Brock and then eventually later at Stikeman Elliott before moving to Paul Hastings in New York in 2018. During a recent interview with college fellow Bob Ambrogi for his fabulous podcast, she described herself as interested in future-proofing law firms and accelerating the pace of positive change in the legal industry. We can all get behind that. She's also the founder of the Legal Innovation and Design Group, which is a global membership group for anybody driving innovation initiatives in the commercial legal space. And she's the publisher of a blog called Tower of Babel. So please join me in welcoming to the stage for our second Spark Talk, our speaker on 4IR and digital transformation, Nicola Shavers.
Hi, everybody. Over the holidays, I was lucky enough to spend time in 2 different hotels overseas. One was tucked away in the mountains in Austria and looked very much like a traditional ski chalet. The other was in the coolest neighborhood in Munich, and everything about it screamed modern. The architecture, the fluorescent lights in the lobby, the interior design, the roof bar. But if you asked me which one I'd go back to, I would say the chalet. In the modern hotel, our room looked innovative and new. Much of the decor was black. The divide between the shower and the bedroom was glass. Rather than an overhead light, there were lights tucked away everywhere. There were long windows with blinds that slid across from one side to the other. Clearly, someone had decided to equip this hotel with all of the new cool functionality possible. Unfortunately, none of it quite worked as it was supposed to. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out which switch turned on which light. It took us a day or 2 to figure out how to make the 2 sets of blinds open. Even though there were lights everywhere, the black walls meant the room always seemed dark. The glass divide from the bathroom meant you were on display as you showered. The cupboard was bizarrely small, holding only a couple of sweaters. It seemed built for a minimalist, but I was staying there with 2 children, and none of this modern, innovative decor worked for us. By contrast, the mountain lodge may have looked traditional, but underneath that wood paneling lay every modern creature comfort you could imagine. There was a motion sensor that meant you didn't have to worry about turning off the light if you got up in the night. The bed was made up with traditional Austrian duvets, but was clearly underpinned by advanced cushioning technology. The TV was pre-tuned to a music channel, and the music was automatically filtered through to the rest of the room. In the ski room downstairs, there were heated prongs sticking out of the wall upon which you could hang and dry your ski boots, which would then be warm when you came down the next morning. Everything worked just the way we needed it to. These experiences made me think about what we do in this industry and why. Both hotels were trying to do the same thing, delight their customers, encouraging them to return again and again and spread the word. But one got it right, truly increasing the pleasure we took in our holiday. And one seemed to have put on a veneer that looked fancy, but didn't help us at all, the innovation theater of the hotel industry. There are many reasons why digitalization is critical in the legal industry. In the States, Model Rule 1.1 was amended in 2012, requiring that lawyers be aware of the benefits and risks of technology in practice. That model rule, now known as the duty of tech competency, has since been adopted in 39 states. Jurisdictions such as the UK and Canada have adopted similar requirements into their rules of professional conduct. And yet a recent study by Ernst & Young indicates that only 20% of lawyers in the US feel they have a solid grasp of the technology used in practice. And 64% of general counsel still feel that legal is an outlier in the sense of lagging behind when it comes to digital innovation. The legal market is more crowded than it used to be. Large law used to be in a category of its own, but that's no longer the case. Boutique firms with specialized expertise have always been around to challenge large law's grasp on high-end work, but now new law models introduce additional threats. Specialized lawyers, often with large law experience, are running firms that are technology forward from the get-go. The ALSP market, which previously was not considered to be a threat to large law, has become a $15 billion industry. And ALSPs are taking work from large law, with one firm stating that ALSPs had stolen 8% of its annual revenue over the past 2 years. This is likely not unusual, and that number will grow. ALSPs are no longer just doing the high volume, low value work they were created to do. Most are making forays into higher end work at lower prices. Over 70% of law firms now use ALSPs. We are reliant on them even as we compete with them, a model that is replicated elsewhere in the industry. The Big Four, whom many law firms will count among their clients, are encroaching on large law, and in jurisdictions where they are not prevented from practicing, they are well and truly entrenched. In Spain, for example, the Big Four take up 4 of the spots on the top 10 list of law firms by annual revenue. The United States, a jurisdiction where deregulation was viewed to be unlikely just a couple years ago, has seen Model Rule 5.4 challenged in various states with success in Utah and Arizona. Close upon the heels of those changes came the country's first non-lawyer-owned firm, Law on Call. Activism in favor of deregulation is ongoing in a handful of other states. These changes open the door to the Big Four and other challengers. Like ALSPs, like new law firms, the Big Four are tech forward. They are process driven, they are digital. In the annual Altman-Weil study, a question is always asked of large law firms. Other than your traditional competitors, who are your top competitors in the market? A trend in the past several years has been the rise of our own clients as competitors. Increasingly, GCs, under immense cost pressure, are keeping more work internal and leveraging technology in ways that reduce their need for outside counsel. Our clients are cannibalizing our work, just as ALSPs are. Other competitors frequently cited in the Altman-Weil survey are legal tech companies themselves. The ability of technology companies to reduce the need for certain types of legal assistance is impacting the amount of work there is in the market. And with clients leveraging technology the way that they are, with legal ops on the rise and digital transformation a buzzword, and organizations such as the Digital Legal Exchange emerging to help drive digitization across our client companies, it's no wonder that they are requiring the same of their law firms. We've all grown accustomed to seeing RFPs come in asking broad brush questions around the use of technology and innovation efforts at a firm. It used to be enough to respond with innovation theater, to paint the walls black, hang some fluorescent lights, add more light switches, fancy blinds and glass, maybe even a roof bar. That kind of flashy faux innovation no longer cuts it. The questions that increasingly come through now are knowledgeable and concrete, requiring specific types of technology licenses, commitments to undertake the development of particular technology solutions, commitments to partnerships that will help the in-house team innovate and digitize their work. There is no question that these types of requests from our clients will grow over time, in both volume and specificity. Our job is to understand and address the changing needs of our clients. We cannot do so without digitization. And yet, how many firms are making a concerted effort to look at the way they undertake all of their work on both the legal and the administrative side to truly drive towards full digitization. If our clients are aiming for this, we have to, else we risk losing market share to those forces that are yapping at our heels, hungry to overtake large law. But all of this aside, digitization is simply inevitable. In every industry, in every experience we have out in the world, whether it is hotels or cars or the way we digest news or books, digital has become the norm. Babies learn to swipe on an iPad before they learn to speak. There were victims of digitization in the newspaper industry because print stalwarts didn't change fast enough, and yet all the signals were there. There will be victims of the legal world too, and we can all see the signals. Our job as lawyers is to delight our clients, to bring them back for more. The traditional facade of large law can survive, but only if underneath that facade, it is cutting edge, underpinned by the most sophisticated digital technology that ensures our every client's need is catered for.
Thank you, Nikki. And again, thank you, Margaret. So now we first consider 4IR's challenges in the first hour, and then we imagine the 4IR solutions we'd like to propose in the second hour. Are you ready? Sure you are. You will be selecting your discussion group on the event page by the group number you were assigned. And before you run off, I just want to thank you for joining us and remind you this time to return to the main stage after you conclude both of your discussions so that you can join your college fellows in our concluding call to action and then some well-deserved networking time in the lobby post-program. Enjoy and engage.